Hey guys, Lockster 42 scale model Alberta. How's everybody doing today? Well, it's end of a Victoria Day long weekend up here in Canada. Weather actually was pretty darn nice, and when it wasn't that nice, I was inside building models. So what we have here in front of you guys are two different types of washes. We've got the MIG Productions washes. It's now called AK Interactives. I bought this quite a few years ago, and a new one I picked up is the Tamiya panel line accent colors. Brown, black, black, brown. So these are very similar products, but just a little bit different, just different enough to make a difference. The MIGs are a little bit thinner. The MIGs are a lot more just like a thin down oil paint. Now these are basically a thin down enamel as well, but they're a little thicker. They're a little bit, the word I want to use is oiler, much higher, much higher, lower viscosity, and these are much thicker. This is much lighter. Now you'd think that the lighter wash would flow better than the thicker wash, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The Tamiya brand seem to really flow much nicer on a panel line than do the MIG pigments. So let me show you a couple other things on here. Now with the MIG, as you can see, it just comes a bottle, and there's your product. You really have to stir or shake these up. The pigment really tends to break out of it. In fact, you can see the kind of the darker bottom line at the bottom of this bottle. The pigments do tend to break out of this a little bit more. So if you want a lighter pigment, just use the top without shaking. But if you want the pure rich pigment in the color, shake it up, stir it up. I use one of these. I always thought these were kind of goofy. These Badger Airbrush mixers. Highly recommend. I think about $16. They use a couple of AA batteries. They're worth it, especially if you use Tamiya paints. You pretty much need one. I use mine every day. Now, as I said, this is a little bit thinner, and you have to use your own brush. Whereas the Tamiyas are a little bit thicker, and they come with a very nice detail pointed brush, just like their glue. They're basically the same bottle as their extra thin cement. It comes with the same type of a brush as well, which is really nice for adding on panel lines. Let me snag a model here that I put the panel lines on using the Tamiya dark brown panel line accent color. Okay, there is my dude. It's freaking pink martyr in Afghanistan. Now you can see all these have been done with the Tamiya panel accent color. I've used the dark brown in this case. You can see how it just makes the panel lines just pop out at you. It looks great. Now there's panel lines washed. There's panel lines without any wash. At this point, I'm not going to call it a wash, but it's actually a pin wash, as in you're just using a tiny little point of color and letting it flow into the recesses. So as you can see, the Tamiya stuff, I really like it. Now if you can see right there, I've got a little bit that's just a little spot where I actually applied it. So you can let this dry. Now I did this originally about 2 weeks ago and didn't clean it up real well. So I'm just using a little bit of MIG thinner for washes on a Q-tip and just tapping down. You see I've got kind of a mess right there. So we just take a little bit of Q-tip, wash down with a little bit of MIG thinner. Yeah, let's see, kind of hard to do. I should get the tripod out. And as you can see, I've cleaned that little schlop up, and now we've just got two nice little bolt holes popping right out at you with the wash. So that's why it's really important to do a pin wash. It really makes the panel lines pop out at you and brings everything to life. If you don't do any other weathering, a simple wash will really add to the depth of your paint job. So I'm going to go snag my tripod, guys. And what the hell, let's do a quick little tutorial on panel washes, or panel accenting. Okay guys, when I first started building models, when you give it a wash, you'd mix up some oil paints, and usually some red, brown, and black, mix it all up into a milky to watery consistency, and slather it over your entire models. Bang, there you got a wash. well, we don't really, it's not really a wash anymore. That's more of a filter, was what we'd call a filter nowadays, versus a wash. Now the difference between a wash and a filter, for me, a pin wash, we're strictly doing the panel lines. All we are doing is highlighting or accenting the panel lines. If you want to cover your entire model with the dark colored stuff, that's awesome, but remember, you're going to end up like those models from the 80s of Verlinden, coal black and very, very dark. No hit against Verlinden. I love his stuff and I love the way he did and what he did for modeling. But I'm definitely moving more towards this, and my filters will be more neutral colors, more colors that are closer to what's on there to make it look faded or to add different weathering techniques. Now you have to remember, the number one most important thing was when you're doing a pin wash is to make sure that the model is done up in a high gloss finish. Prefer an acrylic, either Future or in this case Tamiya clear. For me, I have to thin my Tamiya clear about 50-50 with thinner to get a nice smooth finish, and my Future I thin with Windex, which contains ammonia, which thins the Future floor polish down to about probably 60-40 thinner to Future. For whatever reason, I've always had trouble shooting clears, and if I don't thin them down, I get a really nasty orange peel and a real pebble effect. But thin down, you get a nice smooth finish, as you can see on this martyr. Now, it's really quite simple. Now, the reason you want a gloss coat is because you want to use the capillary action on this, and a flat finish. The paint will not flow. See how that just jumped right up there? So you do a top and a bottom shot. Bang, there's one line down. Little shot there, little shot there, little shot there, little shot there. Now you can come back in the next morning. I'm doing this fairly late in the evening. I just watched Detroit beat Chicago up, which is awesome. Hockey, by the way, guys. And then you can come back and you see the little points where I put it on. There's little dots right there. You want to make sure you clear those off, because otherwise it's the last thing you're going to have, these little dot marks all over your model, and it's just not going to look all that good. Now you can do this 2 or 3 times to get the depth you want, but you can see how just adding this tiny little pin wash just makes these panel lines just pop right out. It just brings your model to life. And as you can see, this one is just about, it'll even, the capillary action takes it vertical, straight up as well, eh? Now, see how I just went down like that? You don't need to do that. Just put your brush in one spot and let the capillary action do it for you. And when you're doing a larger panel line, like on these skirts that have a fairly deep line, you can do it a couple of times. Where these finer ones, just one little hit, and on the bolt head, one around the corner. And you can do several of the smaller ones. You load your brush up and you do 2 or 3 or 4 or half a dozen of the smaller ones. But on these heavier ones, you want to load your brush up fairly heavy and then do it every time. So as you can see here, just something as simple as a tiny little panel wash, a line wash, just brings these models to life. And something like this that's not quite so defined, you can actually run your brush on. But with something like this that's not a true panel line, you don't really need to make it pop all that much, because at that point it starts to get dirty looking, and you don't want that. You don't want your model, you want dirty. There's dirty as in it's gotten dirty, and then there's dirty because you haven't done a good job with your wash and your building techniques. So something like on the road wheels, you don't need to be nearly as fancy. Let's face it, that's where all the grime and grunge is, grease, dirt, debris, all that kind of stuff. You can be a little bit rougher on here. Now, keep in mind too that if you're going to throw some mud in here, you don't need to get carried away with your pin washes. But look at the difference that little wash makes. I hope it's coming out on camera. Let's do this pink one. Let's throw a wash on there. Trying to keep this so you guys can actually see what I'm doing, but it's kind of tough when you got a brush in the way. And you can see how just that makes it pop right out. So anyway guys, just a quick little impromptu tutorial on doing pin washes and how it can bring a model to life. It really does make a difference. So let me reiterate. Make sure you use an acrylic water-based clear coat on this. Use an enamel wash. Now I know there's guys using Citadel Washes. Is excellent. Citadel makes some extremely good washes. For instance, the Newell oil and the Agthrax Earthshade. These are excellent. I use these in figures all the time, and I use generally the same idea, but a little different on figures. For me, at least, these are excellent for figures. I haven't tried them on an armor, so let's just do it right up on camera and see how it works. We'll use a fine little brush here, and let's try some of the Newell oil, and let's try one. There's some small little holes there. Yeah, it works all right. It beads up though as a liquid as a oil water base will, and it works. It does not flow. See, that's the big thing why I don't like a water-based wash. For me, it just doesn't seem to flow as well as an oil-based wash does. It doesn't have that capillary action that will take it up and down the panel lines like a good oil base will. So now all we do is we just take a, like I said, I'm using a slightly thinner dampened Q-tip to clean the dry stuff off. So now as it's drying, you just kind of come along. You see, you can do that. You can do a little bit of shading on it, but you just kind of come along. This may need to give a little bit more. This one's dry enough now. You can just see how that the little dot there just disappears, and you can also do a little bit of weathering there. You know, it's alright, like I said, it's alright to leave these overnight and come back in the morning to clean these up, because the paint will still be oil based, will still be damp enough, because if you leave it, if you try and attack it, clean up the spots too soon, it's just going to streak and run on you, and it's going to make a mess, and you'll end up, as I did on this one, destroying the entire panel line. So just go back and do that again. You know what, it's good to maybe even give yourself overnight, come back and get those little dots, because your model's not going anywhere unless you're in an incredibly big rush. I would recommend just leave it overnight and come back the next day with either a Q-tip or even just a little bit of paper towel. A little bit of dry paper towel works really, really well. In fact, that's probably what I would suggest. Let it sit overnight, come back with a dry paper towel and just give it a light buff to get all those little dots off, like you see right there. You see how that's kind of a splot there? That'll clean it up, and that's what I did over on this side. So you get nice, bright, accented panel lines. So I see I've gone on. It's going to be a 7 or 8 minute video, guys. So anyway, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Take care, guys. Later.